Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon, Sally.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
What's the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am, it is visible.
And am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
It's raining.
Yes, ma'am.
Also.
It's totally dark at my place.
Okay, so today we have our last lecture, and in the first half, we are going to complete the fourth module, which is 4.4. And there are a few things left which I'm going to cover so that we complete our course. Questions, any queries anybody has? Ujjwala?
No, ma'am. I have not received any queries from any one of them, and even I don't have.
Anybody wants to ask anything or say anything? Okay, so in the fourth module, we have been doing strategic evaluation. And like in the second, we did formulation, the third, we did implementation, and in the fourth, we have been doing evaluation and control. So, as a part of evaluation and control, we are going to today do contingency planning and risk management. And we are going to see that how we can minimize the risk, if not eliminate the risk, because as many biggies have said, that the biggest risk in business is not taking any risk. So in the world which is really changing so quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is the one in which we do not take risk. So business and risk, it always goes together. We cannot eliminate the risk. And that is why once the business starts moving, the 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 earnings and the profit and the benefit that you derive can be, there is a possibility of exponential growth there, much more than you can see anywhere else, because higher the risk, higher the reward. So what to do and how to do things that the risk is minimized, so that the strategy what we have made, the planning that we have done can move as per whatever we have designed. Now this whole idea of risk assessment, which is a process in itself, companies generally can identify and prepare for some potential risk, and in the process they can actually end up avoiding some catastrophic consequences, down the road, and keep its structure, the fabric of the organization and the strategy safe. So there are various ways, tools and techniques which are there for this risk assessment? Generally speaking, if we can, there, every business has a scope, has a nature and a scope. So basis that, we can by and large identify some hazards which we can foresee that they might, just take place. Identification of the problem or the risk associated with it, and then also do a little bit of analysis that because of that risk, who might be harmed, how the strategy will be harmed. So the who and the how part of it can also be somewhere, envisaged. And then also maybe decide and evaluate what kind of risk can come, evaluate the degree to which the risk is there, and then make some contingency plans also beforehand. So all this is proactive. So when we are talking about risk management, risk management is not done when the problem occurs. Risk management is done much before. So all this proactively working. So on one hand, when we are planning, when we are doing strategic planning, when we are also doing, maybe the execution has also started much before that. If this risk assessment is also done, then then it is much easier for the obstacles which can come into the way of implementation can to an extent be avoided. And during the implementation execution also, if there is a risk at if the risk has already been envisaged, if it has already been evaluated and the contingency plan or the precautionary plans have already been made, then they just need to be executed when actually the risk arises. So this whole thing of reviewing and assessment and updating is extremely important when it comes to strategic planning, so that before the risk actually the real incident occurs, if the hazards, if the obstacles, they can be of any nature, they can cause harm in any way. It can be work related accidents, it can be some emergency situations, it can be natural disasters that might come, it may be some, if it is a chemical industry, then there might be some toxic chemicals that may be, of concern. It may be the employee conflicts, it can be more than desired level of stress, it can be any kind of harm that that can act like a possible threat, and that needs to be analyzed. Because if not analyzed, then it can lead to lot of injuries in certain cases, lot of illnesses in certain cases, lot of legal problems in certain cases. I remember when this earthquake situation happened at many places. It happened in Gujarat, it happened in Maharashtra. So many drills were done in various organizations, if you remember. So many drills were done, so that next time if it happens, then people know how to and where to. Likewise, in today's situation also, the organizations are really gearing up that once they open, then how to manage that entire scenario. So therefore, there are various aspects, and now let's see what this whole thing means to us. So have you heard of something known as contingency planning? What is a contingency planning?
In times of crisis, how we handle the situation in kind of changing times, like supposing epidemic times, how hospital manages there is an emergency situation, and because of pandemic there is increase in patient numbers and everything, so there is complete mishap that's happening because of sudden changes. So how the business should be not impacted with all the kind of emergencies and high pressure and stress management. That is all. That is what is meant in contingency planning.
Yes. Anybody else? What is contingency planning?
Ma'am, it can be also certain plannings about future events which may happen, and there are the precautionary plannings, which are the events which are not really predicted. So, for example, now if we are talking about a chemical industry, so this toxic chemicals, if are like accidents, if there are accidents happening, so the planning for that kind of situations can be contingency planning.
Yes. Now let's see what they say. It can be defined as alternative plans that can be put into effect if certain key events do not occur as expected. Only high priority areas require the insurance of contingency plans. Strategists cannot and should not try to cover all bases by planning for all possible contingency. This is not possible. So it is the high priority areas. So Janvi says plan B. So it is only high. Now the key thing is that only high priority areas, they require the insurance of contingency planning. Strategists cannot and should not try to cover all bases by planning for all possible contingencies. But in any case, contingency plans should be as simple as possible. So why do they say here that the strategists cannot and should not try to cover all bases by planning for all possible contingencies? Why do they say this?
Because, ma'am, there are n number of possibilities that could happen. To an extent, you can think of, but if you keep going on and thinking about what is the next possible situation that could happen, then you'll just be wasting too much time on that.
Negativity and what to say, that's more of an overthinking, like I will say.
One part is that. What can be some other this thing, if we keep doing that?
Practically it is not possible. Supposing in case of even in case of, if you want to say if we have an oxygen manufacturing company, so it is like we have to have n number of oxygen manufacturing companies, which is not practically possible to, even in case of emergency. So thinking and overthinking that we have to be having so much of raw materials and infrastructure and start establishing the companies, and it will be like making no sense. Like,
so the resources, because the resources are at stake, and resources are only this much and not, I mean, we don't have yes, yeah. Is anybody saying something? Ujjwala, are you saying something?
No, I wanted to, but you started. So, yeah. So same thing, that resources are limited, and if we go on planning only contingency plan, then the main focus or the main goal of the company, that will be sidelined. So main focus should be on the growth and on what are the things which are required for the company to grow, and then contingency plan can be for maybe certain high priority areas as mentioned earlier, where there is no option, there is no alternative. So there we need to have one or two
and where emergency the stakes plans are very high.
Yeah, where the stakes are very high.
Where the stakes are very high. Yeah. So that is, so resources and where the stakes are high, that is fair, and that also comes out by studying and analyzing the nature and the scope of the organization. So basis that the resources and where the stakes are high, that is where we, we do this kind of a drill. So contingency plans commonly established by firms include if a major competitor withdraws from particular markets, as intelligence reports indicate, what actions should our firm take? Major competitor withdraws from particular markets, as intelligence reports indicate, what action should our firm take? So what does that imply? Anybody? It's a very important thing. It's a very important indicator.
We need to understand why the competitor has withdrawn, what is the cause for their withdrawal, and if we can have an advantage because of the withdrawal that they've had, and then we can plan accordingly, I think now.
Are we talking about advantage here?
No, but contingency. So maybe because of what the reason is, if we understand, we can be prepared for how that could affect us as well.
Yes. So that is a thing. So here we are trying to see that, and this happens a lot in in the everywhere. That sometimes there is some high profile exit that takes place from the organization, or maybe sometimes there are multiple high level exits that takes place in the organization. So the competitors should always review the situation, why it is happening, for what reason, because maybe they are facing it and we will be the next one to face in the industry, because it's an industry that we are operating. A lot of things are common there. So contingency plans are generally, number one reason is, the indicator is when a major competitor withdraws from particular market. Then what should I do? Then if our sales objectives are not reached, what action should our firm take to avoid profit or losses? Sales objectives are not being achieved, and therefore we need some action, we need some plan B, because somewhere my strategy is not falling in place. So what should I do? So there should always be a plan B. Whenever you are making any strategy, there has to be a plan B. If this does not work, then what else? If demand for our new product exceeds the plans, what action should our firm take to meet the higher demand? I remember when this OnePlus had come, it only came on the online channels, distribution channels, and soon there was so much of demand for it. For some reason, whatever that reason is, maybe it was, I mean, many reasons were given, but there was so much of demand that for some time there was a lull. They were not able to cater to the demand. Do you remember that? When they were not able to cater to the demand. So these things do happen, and these things also happen.
And do they do it purposely like that? The demand and price, like how do they plan it and do it purposely? Initially they reduce the stock and then.
No, they were not able to cater to they didn't anticipate that it's going to become so much of a hit.
Okay.
They were just.
And does it can it be a strategy? Like this kind of thing is it employed somewhere? That sometimes they release the stock very less, make it very scarce, and increase then the demand goes higher.
Yeah, all those strategies are there, but I'm just talking about this OnePlus as a example, wherein the product exceeded, the demand for the product exceeded much more than the expectations. They were only testing waters here. That's why they never had any offline presence. They were trying to see because there was already so much of saturation in the market. There were so many models, there were so many companies which were already there in the market. See, major players are Apple, Samsung, LG, and then you have so many others, Apple, Vivo, I don't know what, Vivo, Oppo, and so many things are there. in this in such a market, when you have so many players, we need to see. And if you plan to have an offline presence, then you need a big investment for that. So they were just trying to test waters and do a market research as to whether it will work or not. And it overnight it was like lot of demand came in for the product, and it is still very successful. It was able to navigate through a very saturated market. So I'm sure the OnePlus has a story there, must be having a story there. There were so many converts from Samsung and from Apple. There were so many converts who were there. So therefore, this is what they are talking about, and it can happen the other way also. So if my stock is not sold, then it's lying in the inventory as an inventory in the warehouse. Then what do I do? How to clear that out? So contingency plan has to be both ways. So these are few examples that they have given. Then another things are, then if there are certain disasters which occur, such as loss of computer capabilities, a hostile takeover attempt, loss of patent protection, or destruction of manufacturing facilities because of earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, what actions should a firm take? What is a hostile takeover?
Terrorist.
Ma'am, is it a computer is hacked, the software, something like that?
Bolo, more ideas.
Or
Ma'am, if in a
virus?
cruel way the somebody else's business is overtaken, something like that maybe.
Cruel way. What is that cruel way? Yeah, you are right. But yes, anybody else? What is a hostile takeover?
A forceful takeover, like by some. Maybe in the family business also sometimes happens. If there are two.
No, there are other companies also. There is a very,
Yeah, other companies also. Yeah.
yes,
Can happen.
there are other companies also. Very recent, not very recent, but very famous hostile takeover. I don't know whether you are aware about that or not. L&T had done. L&T, you know what is L&T?
Yeah. It's meant to be, no?
Have you heard about have you heard about L&T?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Larsen and Toubro, na, you're talking about.
Larsen and Toubro. It has a L&T Infotech is one of their companies, L&T Infotech, which is into software and information technology. And they had done this hostile takeover of Mindtree, which is a Bangalore-based company, and another infotech company. And that was so they had bought in their shares. They had bought in the shares from the founders and from the partners. And over a period of time, it was a case of hostile takeover, wherein they just dethroned the people who were, the founders, and then they took over the entire company. And it was a bit to make L&T Infotech a more robust company, because it was not, that wing of L&T was not doing as good as other wings, and therefore there was a hostile takeover there. So that is one of the examples of hostile takeovers. Hostile takeover, if it happens, then suddenly you have another management who's taking care of you, whether you like it or you don't. So in that case also, what would you do? All your capabilities, all your resources are now somebody else's. So what is the contingency plan to handle that kind of a scenario? So, so likewise, and when there are natural calamities, and we are all witnessing such a big, a pandemic, so to say, for which I think still we are grappling with a contingency plan. We really don't know how to plan for it. I mean, all trial and error is going on. Yeah, Janvi, you want to say something? Unmuted yourself. So if there is a new technological advancement which makes our new product obsolete sooner than expected, what actions should a firm take? I think most of the IT companies, they undergo this dilemma. Is Vaibhav there? I think Vaibhav can contribute and to this.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you can
Like,
throw more light on this.
all technologies nowadays have a life cycle of around 3 years to 4 years.
Yes.
So whenever something new comes, we have to migrate all our softwares to the new technology, and that's a big headache. So if we don't have that manpower trained with us, and some company comes up with new requirement, we fall into trouble. So that's the normal routine for IT industry, and I'm experiencing it from last 15 years.
Yes. And the contingency plan that you have for that is?
Continuous training, understand new technology. Like right now, my company is ready with some products related to uh, blockchain and all. So we are promoting that blockchain stuff for all the government organizations and all. And we are collaborating with a Singapore-based company. So on Sunday only we have some discussions and meetings. So we are doing that. And previously we were into geographical information system. So if we don't update ourselves, we'll be obsolete and will be out of the industry.
Most of the IT firms, be it Accenture, be it TCS, be it middle-sized companies, small-sized companies, their huge budget, percentage of their budget goes into training their workforce,
Yes.
which somewhere affects their profits also, their revenues also, because a huge chunk is going into training. But that's the nature of the business. Either we keep ourselves updated by skilling our armed force, or by skilling the manpower, train the workforce to keep the pace with the increasing demand for digital services, or else we perish in the market. There is always a dilemma there, whether to hire people, who with a technical know-how, with a particular technical know-how, or you keep training. And somehow, that recruitment and selection also comes at a huge cost. And there is an opportunity cost also to it. So they keep training. So these IT companies, for that matter, because of the nature of the company, has to be on a continuous learning curve. So likewise, every organization has some or the other hazard to it, some or the other risk element to it, and there has to be an emergency plan to take care of that. So that is what we mean by the contingency plan. The effective contingency planning involves a 7-step process. Here they have given certain food for thought, and there is some process there which we can look into. Identify both beneficial as well as unfavorable events that could possibly derail the strategy or the strategies. Why a beneficial event? It is said identify both beneficial, unfavorable event. Of course, all of us understand that. But why a beneficial event?
Ma'am, it can be like the first example, what you the competitor suddenly withdraws the product from the market. Now, suppose you're able to hear me.
Your voice is breaking, Ujjwala.
maybe due to internet connection. Okay, now, hello.
Yes, yes.
So the example which you gave, ma'am, previously, the competitor withdraws certain product from the market. Now here, suppose they are withdrawing due to their own, like it happened in case of Maggie, So other, it can be beneficial for the other companies, So suddenly, we can bring our product into the market. So can this be beneficial?
Yeah.
That can be the example.
Beneficial for the other company.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we should plan also for that kind of, like, you should identify what can be beneficial and then unfavorable events for
This is not something that you can, here what we are saying is that any beneficial or unfavorable event that could possibly derail the strategy or strategies. So any kind of event that can prove to be beneficial or unfavorable for us. So this is one example. Any other example of any beneficial event that you can think about?
a sudden demand for the product, more like sudden demand,
Yes.
more demand for the product.
Yes, more demand for the product is there for some reason, and we really don't know how to cope with that. Like recently, there was a demand for oxygen cylinders.
Yeah.
It was a beneficial thing.
Yeah.
But we really didn't know how to cope with that. For that matter, even beds also. It was a beneficial thing for the health, for the medical industry, for the healthcare industry. It was, if your product is being sold, it is a good thing only. But then we didn't really know how to make the best use of that thing, that event. Anybody else can think of anything?
Ma'am, with us, many times it used to happen like if a big order comes, all the raw material supplier, they start behaving like a monopolistic stuff. So they will increase the price because they are aware that this company has got a big order. And so that is a favorable or beneficial event, but becomes unfavorable for us. So sometimes we try to do that. Even if we get a big order, we to keep it so secret so that these raw material suppliers and things, they don't understand that this thing has happened.
Maybe stagger the whole thing, so that they are not aware. So maybe you are operating in a climate wherein the number of suppliers are limited.
Yes, ma'am. 6 months back, there was a huge requirement of bromine. So we were needing 100 tons, and major supplier for bromine is Reliance and Tata.
What
and bromine.
Bromine, acha. Okay.
Bromine. So it was a raw material required for one of the manufacturer. But the small producers, they extract the bromine from some other processes, and they were ready to supply it for 400 rupees per ton. And Reliance and Tata, they have the price rate of around 1,000 rupees. I'm just giving example. So all of a sudden, as they came to know that our company has got the order, these small producers also started selling it for 1,000, and they started saying that we don't have stock, and they work in syndicate. So one news is given to one supplier, it will be forwarded to everyone because of WhatsApp and all that. And we couldn't complete the order. We have to say no to that manufacturing company. So such thing happens because of the communication, and even if you have a big order, but you can't fulfill
so the
that.
contingency plan is to stagger the order and keep it secret.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, very nice. Okay. So another thing is that first is identification, and then is specify trigger points. Calculate about when contingency events are likely to occur. This you may or may not be able to. I mean, we can just, so this is scenario building. Basically, and there are special mathematical tools for this. There are specific statistical tools for this, to do this scenario building and look for probabilities and look for the scenarios wherein this kind of thing will happen. Then also assess the impact of each contingent event. How much impact it will have. Like it is said earlier also, not every risk will have impact of a particular magnitude. Now, for example, like how Weber was saying, that if he does not get the supplies, then obviously, he will not be able to complete the order. Now, if he is only working for that order, or that order is a big order for him, then it's a huge impact. It's a huge impact on his business. So therefore, one needs to assess the impact of each contingent event, estimate the potential benefit or harm of each contingent event, then develop a contingency plan. Be sure that contingency plans are compatible with current strategy and are economically feasible. That is very important. We can't look for solutions which are beyond us, which are like completely they might be very good, they might be followed by a lot of other companies and lot of other setups, but economically, is it feasible for me? Will I be able to sustain that? Will I be able to to employ that, to deploy that? Is it possible for me? So that kind of study is very important. Then also assess the counter impact of each contingency plan. That is, estimate how much contingency plan will capitalize on or cancel out its associated contingent events. Doing this will quantify the potential value of each contingency plan. Anybody would like to speak on this? What do you understand of this?
Ma'am, is it the revenue which is being or resources, how much they'll be used for if the consistent contingency plan is worked upon? So that is the estimate, and capitalize, that is the estimate how much it will take, and then cancel out the associated contingent event. Now suppose the event is something like it can be earthquake or whatever natural disaster, and then the company, suppose it was going to the loss of, for example, we take 50 crores. That is the loss. Now suppose this contingency plan is in place and it avoids that loss, then that can be the value of this contingency plan, or minus the resources what is used to work out that plan.
Yes.
Something.
Anybody else would like to try? Estimate how much each contingency plan will capitalize on or cancel out its associated contingency event. Anybody can try. Yeah.
Ma'am, I will try with a very vague example. Maybe you all will like it. जैसे आपके घर में एक काम वाली बाई है और उसको 3 काम है, झाड़ू पोछा करना है, बर्तन करने हैं और कपड़े धोने हैं. ओके, सो अगर एक काम वाली बाई को 3 काम दे देंगे एंड शी इज नॉट कमिंग, सो यू विल बी इन ट्रबल. So what my wife is doing, she is keeping 2 kamwali bais, and if in case one is not coming, that other will handle all the 3 activities. But if we say that collective cost remains the same, because if we consider 1,000 rupees per kamwali bai for per work, so total value is 3,000 rupees. Okay, for 3 other activities. If we have 3 kamwali bais doing 1 activity for each, still the cost remains the same. But if it happens like those kamwali bhai start charging different amount. So I have to check and I have to see that the estimate impact is different. So with respect to that, you have to analyze. But I am totally risk free. Even if 2 kamwali bhais are not coming, my work is not getting hampered. So that thing means that other kamwali bhai is contingency plan for me, and the cost is also I'm saving.
I think very practical example he has given. One of the most practical things that he has said. Yeah. So have you understood? So the floor is open for everybody. Has everybody understood the point to this example? It is quite self-explanatory, but still, Vaibhav is there to take our questions. Anybody? Yeah, Janvi, have you understood?
Yes, ma'am. The example was quite interesting.
No, it was interesting, but did you understand what he was saying in this context?
Yeah.
Estimate how much each contingency plan will capitalize on or cancel out its associated contingent event. Doing this will quantify the potential value of each contingency plan. Shilpi, have you understood?
I have just joined and there was some network issue. So I was out for some time.
Priyanka, have you understood? Saili, have you understood?
Yeah, ma'am.
Saili, have you understood?
Could you please explain it again? I think there's some network issue and the voice was breaking in between.
Fine. So I think he has told us that what it means. So basically, the counter impact of each contingency plan. That if we put, so if there are more than one plan A, plan B, plan C that we have, and then we try to see that if plan A is put in place, then what is the impact that will have vis-a-vis others. So that kind of assessment has to be done whenever there is any kind of event that for which we are planning. We need to have we can have more than one plan, and then we need to see that economically and the complete feasibility, assess the feasibility of each one and see which one will work the best, and then go ahead with that. Then determine early warning signals for key contingent events. Monitor the early warning signals. Very, very important. So we need to see what are those early warnings which are there. And then act rather than the whole problem happens and then we start acting. Because initial detection and initial treatment is easier than the whole thing happening. There are certain disasters in which we really cannot have those early signs, but there are many disasters in which we can, so we need to be very vigilant. Then for contingent events with reliable early warning signals, develop advanced action plans to take advantage of the available lead time. What is lead time? What do you mean by lead time?
Lead time is, ma'am, the time when we get to know that the event is going to happen and before the event happens. So the time for the action, we know that the event is going to happen. That from that time to actual when the event happens, that can be the lead time. How early we come to know about the event.
Yes. So it is the time, it is the amount of time that passes from the start of a process until the process is ended. So that is known as the lead time. So generally companies, they review the lead time when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to supply chain management, when it comes to project management. So during the processing, the pre-processing, so it's a time between pre-processing, processing and post-processing, that is the lead time. So from the beginning till the end, pre-processing, processing and post-processing. So that is a lead time. And in all businesses, you generally have a lead time. So whatever available lead time is there, if we can, early signs, early warning signals, if we get in the pre-processing time itself, then it is better that then we get a lot of time advantage. Otherwise, if we are in the middle of it, or if we are almost at the conclusion, then it becomes all the more difficult. So these are 7 steps. Then 21st century challenges in strategy management. 3 particular challenges of decisions that face all strategists today are deciding whether the process should be more an art or a science, decide whether strategies should be visible or hidden from stakeholders, deciding whether the process should be more top down or bottom up in their form. Any ideas on these? I think the biggest challenge is whether to decide whether the process should be more top down or bottom up in their form. What do you mean by top down? Saili, what do you mean by the top down process? Top down process. Harshada, any idea on what is top down?
Good afternoon, ma'am. No, ma'am. I don't know.
No problem. Shilpi, what is top down? Any idea? Top down is when the decisions are taken at the top and the others are, down the line, communication or the information is flowing down the line, but the main deciding decisions are taken at the top and
Top level management.
information flows down. Top down management. And bottom up is when everybody is consulted at every level and then decisions are taken. So that is bottom up. So you have top down. So there is always a dilemma whether to have a top down approach, how much of top down approach, the degree to which the autonomy and the decentralization should take place, and the degree to which centralization or decentralization should take place. So either top down or bottom up, which approach to be used, and whether strategies should be visible or hidden from stakeholders. So this is again a very big dilemma, whether how much to hide, how much to reveal, at what stage to reveal, because so many times if you reveal everything, initially, then there is always the fear of competition and in misinterpretation, and then all your tricks and tricks of the pack will go out, and then there is always a danger of imitation. So to avoid all that, these certain things, they always keep rattling all the strategists how much. And so it says art or science issue. So it says strategy. Scientists reject strategies that emerge from emotion, hunch, creativity, and politics. In fact, I have, okay, I'll show you that later. So it says proponents of the artistic view often consider strategic planning exercise to be time poorly spent. The Mintzberg philosophy insists on informality, whereas strategy scientists insist on more formality. Mintzberg refers to strategic planning as an emergent process, whereas strategy scientists use the term deliberate process. Any idea what is an emergent process in strategy? Strategy planning as an emergent process. Since we know now so much about strategy, so any ideas on if it strategy should be a emergent or a deliberate process?
Are they talking about the terms only if the situation arises? That is an emergent process, or it is
okay. You know, emergent strategy. Any other idea about emergent strategy? You know, it is a pattern generally of action that develops over a period of time in an organization. When you don't have any, it is sometimes also known as realizes strategy. It happens over a period of time. So maybe, you know, Facebook, what you see now was not Facebook when it started. It is over a period of time. You know, if you see the history of Facebook, you will realize that how it started, it was just, you know, a college project on which few people were working, and then it how now the how we see Facebook is very different from what it had started earlier. So it's an emergent strategy wherein one thing led to another. And when we talk about deliberate strategy, it is more like a realized strategy. Here the resultant results, the outcome, it matches the intended course of action. Whatever was intended happened. But emergent is something, as and when circumstances kept changing, the ideas kept coming and the strategy kept evolving. That is emergent. And deliberate is when you have planned for something and exactly the same thing happens. That is a deliberate strategy. It is not wise for a, has everybody understood? It is not wise for a strategist to rely too heavily on gut feeling and opinion instead of research data, competitive intelligence and analysis and formulating strategy. So when we talk about art, strategy as an art, it is more to do with your hunch. It is more to do with emotions, what you feel, what is your gut feeling. Basis that we proceed. And when we talk about science, then it is more research oriented. But generally, when we are talking about strategy, it is a combination of art and science. It is never, you know, a complete science effort and never a complete art effort. It's always a combination. Then visible or hidden issues. Some reasons to be completely open with the strategy process and resultant decisions. Managers, employees, and other stakeholders can readily contribute to the process. That is one of the reasons why it should be shared with all, so that everybody's opinion can be taken. More brainstorming can happen. Secrecy would forego many excellent ideas. Investors, creditors, and other stakeholders have greater basis for supporting a firm when they know what the firm is doing and where the firm is going. So this is a positive aspect of it. Visibility promotes democracy, whereas secrecy promotes autocracy. Domestic firms and most foreign firms prefer democracy over autocracy as a management style. What is a democratic management style? Janvi has a big confusion on her face. What is a democratic style of functioning?
Where opinions are taken from all the members and voting system, like
Yes.
that is done.
And autocracy is when somebody's
One order is given and everybody has to follow
dominant.
Yes.
without their
So if there is a visibility, then obviously there is going to be democracy because everybody's ideas will be consulted and entertained. Then participation and openness enhance understanding, commitment, and communication within the firm, which is very, very important for any strategy execution to take place. Now, reasons why some firms prefer to conduct strategic planning in secret and keep strategies hidden from all, but the highest level executives are basically this is not visible, but it is talking about imitation, and it is talking about duplicating the firm's strategy. If there is free dissemination of a firm's strategy may easily translate into undermining the firm's. So this point is something to do with imitation and duplication. Then comparative intelligence for rival firms who could exploit the firm given that information. Secrecy limits criticism. Seconds guessing and hindsight. Participation in a visible strategy process becomes more attractive to rival firms who may lure them away. Basically, it's to do with more to do with imitation and duplicacy. That is why strategies are hidden. And top-down and bottom-up approach we have already seen. Proponents of the top-down approach contend that top executives are the only persons in the firm with the collective experience, acumen, and fiduciary responsibility to make key strategic decisions. What are fiduciary responsibilities? Then some people, they just decide that they are going to be the ones who are going to, legally and ethically act on behalf of everybody. So that is fiduciary. And bottom up is when, of course, we have discussed this, when advocates argue that lower and middle level managers and employees who will be implementing the strategies need to be actively involved in the process of formulating the strategy to ensure their support and commitment. Strategists must reach a working balance of the two approaches in a manner deemed best for their firms at a particular time, when cognizant of the fact that current research supports the bottom up approach, at least among US firms. And now, even in India, a lot of MNCs and big companies, they have this kind, but it's always all these three aspects that we have seen of strategy. They are always dependent upon the nature of the industry and the management style and the board of directors. It, how much and what to what degree it has to be art and science, visible or invisible, or top down and bottom up. There is no one rule for it. It is always by trial and error that all these things are decided. So we meet after 15 minutes of break, wherein we are going to finish whatever is remaining. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so these are two small things that I had not covered. So I thought I'll cover it now. So when we were talking about strategy and strategic fit, we said that while operational excellence or sorry, is anybody saying anything? Okay. So when we were talking about, this is the first module that we had. So because it was getting too stretched out, so I just took a break from this. So when we were talking about strategic fit, we spoke about that while operational effectiveness is about achieving excellence wherein we in individual activities, because operational effectiveness is about, what do you mean by operational effectiveness, anybody? How do you achieve operational effectiveness?
Ma'am, it is doing the things again and again to get that perfection or to avoid the mistakes and to increase the speed.
Yes, because you keep doing the things again and again. So you achieve a kind of efficiency, wherein you start working with minimum inputs, maximum output starts coming, and and also the number of defects also gets reduced. So that is operational effectiveness. So when we talk about operational effectiveness, we are talking about achieving excellence in individual activities or functions in a strategy by combining the activities and doing them again and again. But when we talk about competitive advantage, it comes from those activities which have a strong fit and also they reinforce each other. So whatever, like we gave, and for to explain this, we had used an example of Indigo, wherein the positioning was low cost airline, and whatever strategic fit was created, the activities that were involved, they were all supporting the strategic positioning, which was low cost activity, low cost positioning. So therefore, there are three types of fits which are there. One is the first order fit, the second order fit, and the third order fit. What is a first order fit? First order fit is generally, we are talking about simple consistency between each activity or function. Simple consistency between each activity and function and the overall strategy. And it is this consistency in activities and functions which ensures the competitive advantage of activities. So the competitive advantage cumulatively, it is a result of the simple consistency in the activities and functions leads to competitive advantage. And this consistency which is there, it makes it easier to communicate the strategy to the consumers, to the employees, to the stakeholders, to the shareholders, and it also improves the implementation because of the single-mindedness which is there in the entire corporation, in the entire firm. So when we talk about first order fit, what we mean is that we align the activities with its strategic positioning. So when you're talking about first order fit, you're talking about simple consistency in functions and in activities, which is in alignment with the strategic positioning. So whatever is strategic positioning the company has chosen to create for its activities, the activities and functions will be designed in a very consistent way and they will keep happening. For example, IKEA. For example, IKEA. For example, Indigo. The positioning is created, simple consistency in activities, and we keep repeating it. We keep repeating it, and cumulatively it leads to year on year, it leads to the comparative advantage. We keep refining them. So everything that is a first order fit. Is it clear to all? Alignment of activities with its strategic position. That is first order fit. Now, what is second order fit? Second order fit occurs when activities are reinforcing. Second order fit occurs when activities are reinforcing. For example, if you remember, we had taken example of Neutrogena. Now, Neutrogena, we remember what was Neutrogena? It was cosmetics with medicinal value. That is Neutrogena. So whatever Neutrogena sells, it always has a medical angle to it. So now how can we reinforce Neutrogena? If we have Neutrogena, then, and we know that not everybody will go for Neutrogena. Neutrogena was always a very upscale product. It was an upscale product, market of which was upscale, and therefore to promote Neutrogena, if it is kept in upscale hotels, then it is offered to their guest and as a product which is recommended by dermatologists. So it's a product kept in upscale hotels, for example, a product which is recommended by dermatologists. Now, such upscale hotels, they grant Neutrogena the privilege of using its customary packaging while requiring other soaps to feature the hotel's name. Now, once guests have tried Neutrogena in a luxury hotel, they are more likely to purchase it at the drugstore or ask their doctors about it. Thus, Neutrogena's medical and hotel marketing activities, they reinforce each other. Like for the first time, when I got introduced to Forest Essentials, it was also on one of my travels. So I was in one of the hotels where for the first time I had those, when the toiletries are given, I was given this Forest Essentials. And till today it is stuck to me. So the thing is that it is a reinforcing activity, wherein Neutrogena, for whatever that is, or Forest Essentials for whatever that is, they are using some other platform to reinforce it, to reinforce the activity, to reinforce, the product. So this marketing activity is done to reinforce the product. Is it clear to you? So that is a second level fit. In first level fit, it was a simple consistency, which was leading to cumulative competitive advantage. And in second order fit, it occurs when any kind of activity is reinforcing. Something is done to reinforce the product. Something is done to reinforce the service. That is a second order fit. So these are certain keywords that you need to remember when it comes to first order fit. It will be simple consistency leading to competitive advantage. And second order fit, it will be this reinforcement in activities, which is leading to competitive advantage. Now the third order fit. Now this goes beyond this activity of reinforcement. And to this, Porter generally refers to optimization of effort. So when we talk about third order fit, we are talking about optimization of effort. There is coordination there. There is information exchange there, which may happen across activities to eliminate the redundancy and to minimize the wasted effort. These are the most basic ways. How will you optimize? What do you mean by optimization?
Effective utilization.
Effective utilization, utilizing the activity to the best,
To the highest.
This thing. Now, how will that happen? Optimization will only happen if we minimize the wastage. That is one way. Or we eliminate the redundancy. That is, it does not become obsolete, old, redundant. So these are the certain ways in which we optimize the product. So third order fit, when we are talking about, we always remember the word optimization of effort. So first level, it is simple consistency. Second level, it is
Reinforcing the actions.
of any kind of activity. Here we gave an example of a marketing activity. It can be any kind of activity which is used to reinforce the product. And then it is the third order fit, which talks about optimization. Optimization, which comes through coordination, which comes through minimization of wastage, which comes through eliminating the redundancy. Say, for example, I'll give you an example here of maybe Gap, the retailer, of casual clothes. Now, Gap generally, it considers product availability in its stores as a very, very critical element of its strategy. Availability in stores. So many times you go to the stores and you find that, the product is not available. So Gap generally, it gives lot of importance to availability of stock in the stores. That is a part of their strategy. Now Gap could keep products either by holding the stores in either by holding store inventory or by restocking from warehouses. There are two ways only in which you can keep the inventory on. Either you stock that much in your store, or you keep restocking it through from the warehouse. Now, how has Gap optimized its efforts across these activities is by restocking its selection of basic clothing almost daily from its warehouses. So the inventory management, which leads to effective inventory management, so that the wastage is reduced, the store, the amount of the capacity that is required in the store to stock so that every time it is available is also goes down, because the inventory management is done in such a way that every day you are stocking things and you are restocking things from the warehouse. So they have worked on that process in such a way that they really need to carry a minimum inventory in their stock, in their stores, and they have really worked effectively with a restocking, from the warehouses. So therefore, there is a minimization that is happening in the need to carry large in-store inventory. So they are not carrying largest in-store inventories. They are minimizing by, they are optimizing by effective inventory control from the warehouses. Now this emphasis which is there on restocking, because Gap's merchandising strategy, Like in the second order, we saw the marketing strategy. Here we are talking about merchandising strategy. It sticks to basic items in relatively very few colors. So, and they keep restocking it. So while comparable retailers, achieve turns of 3 or 4 times per year, Gap generally turns its inventory 7.5 times per year because of this. And rapid stocking reduces the cost of implementing of Gap's short model cycles. So here they are working upon their model cycles. Because of this restocking, the operations part of it, the restocking model cycle. So that is almost 6 to, the 7.5 times to what in other stores it will be 2 times or 3 times. So they have worked on that process so that the, the optimization is achieved. Also, they work on their product design in such a way that they reduce the after sales service. So the design will be worked in such a way that there are less of defects. So therefore, the after sales service is also reduced. So these are certain ways, in which we can design the fit. So these 3 kinds of fit, always remember it. In all these 3 types of fit, the whole matters, the entire thing, the whole, the matters more than any individual part. Competitive advantage generally comes from the activities of the entire system. The fit among activities generally substantially, if you create a good fit, a strategic fit, what will it help us in? It will help us in reducing the cost. It helps us in increasing the differentiation. And now we know, since we have done the latter modules, we know that either it is through reduction in cost or increasing the uniqueness that we can achieve the best of that, the leadership, the competitive advantage. And according to Porter, companies generally should think in terms of these themes that actually takes place, that pervades all these activities. Either it is low cost or it is differentiation. And work on core competency, work on critical resources and strengths which cut across all the functions and blends each other. All the activities, all the strategic activities should blend in each other so that it creates a strong strategic fit. Is it clear to all? All the 3 types of fit, is it clear to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Now there is another small part that is remaining, and it is 5 P's of strategy. Now this 5 P's of strategy is basically a Mintzberg 5 P's of strategy. So 5 P's of strategy is basically a theory which is used in business to help companies better define their strategy, how you want to define your strategy. Each P relates to different approach for assessing the strategy. So first is plan, second is ploy, third is pattern, fourth is position, and fifth is perspective. Now, by looking at each of these P's in the context of strategy, Mintzberg suggested that if you generally one has a greater chance of overall success if we look at strategy in this way. Now, these 5 P's were developed as a framework through which we can assess the strength of a business strategy. So this is not generally a framework that helps you build your strategy or a way of structuring this, structuring your strategic plan. These are intended as a way to test and examine the merits of strategy once you have already designed the strategy. By using this, you generally try to see what is the strength of the strategy. So when you have strategy that you believe is ready to get executed, then just take a pause. Bring up this entire, this framework or this set of 5 P's, and then try to interrogate where your strategy lies. And that is the purpose of basically Mintzberg 5 P's of strategy. It makes the whole thing little more challenging and gives it a more sort of, the success becomes little higher, because through this model you come to know where your strength lies. So first is the P part of it. P is about planning. Now you tell me that when you are talking about in the strategic sense, planning phase is what? When we are planning, what are we trying to do?
It is the initial, Janvi here.
Yeah.
It is the initial stage of the strategy when we are planning it.
Planning it, and how do you plan? What is the first thing that you do?
See how, not see, but calculate or calculate the resources that we have, if we are capable to pull out that strategy.
So anybody else? Any quick words from anybody else?
Ma'am, I think the planning, the first stage would be understanding what our objective, our aim is, our goal is, and accordingly, with the resources that we have, map out how we are going to do it.
Before objective setting, we first need to plan by understanding the environment. So understanding the wider environment by using our pestle analysis and whatever external environment and models that we have done, first thing is assess whether what, and try and understand the wider environment, the external environment, by using some model. And then, like Arun said, we need to plan by setting a clear objective. They can be short-term objective, they can be long-term objective, they can be milestones, they can be whatever, targets. So we need to first of all do an assessment when we are planning. We first need to start by scanning the environment, then setting the clear objectives, and then try to see what are the internal strengths and weaknesses by using the SWOT analysis, by doing the SWOT analysis of our resources. Okay, so that is the planning part of it. So the word strategy and also the word strategy and planning, generally they are used very interchangeably, in the discussions. But it's important to step back and evaluate certain aspects of your strategy to determine whether the right level of planning has taken place. So we need to see whether the strategic objectives that we have made, they are in sync with the real plan or not. The underneath, we need to see that we need to hit the target. The underneath objective is to ensure that we hit the target. For that, strategic objectives should be in line with the real plan. So are those intended objectives backed up with the insight and with an intelligence that we were talking about? Did we create those strategic objectives after doing a proper industry analysis? So all these things need to be kept in mind when we are talking about planning. So planning can be any plan, but when done in this way, it becomes a strategic plan. Is it clear to all? A little bit. Then next is ploy. When we talk about the second P, the ploy, now ploy is basically the specific actions within your strategy that relate to the competition. It might be to disrupt them, because strategies are made once in our for the organization, but we always keep the competitors in mind. So when we talk about ploy, we talk about specific action within the strategy that relate to competition. It might be to disrupt them. It might be to take the market share. That is always a objective, to gather the market share. So if you are, any company, the purpose of ploy is basically to ensure that you have considered your competitive strategy, and now you already have a plan in place. There is a strategy, competitive strategy is there, and have a plan to get the better of competition through a specific chosen approach. So what can be the helpful tools there? We have a competitive strategy because we have a plan. Now we move to ploy. So ploy would be to get better of competition. How do we do that? What could be the helpful tools?
So, survey reports.
Sorry?
Survey or research, or how
BCG.
Sorry, somebody said?
BCG growth curve.
Yes. So all those models now need to come into.
Hands off matrix.
We need to first now start doing a Porter's 5 forces model for the external, so that you can understand the current market. You can understand the current market using the wider scan was done by pestle analysis. But now, since you want to really understand the intensity of the rivalry, you need to see how powerful is the supplier. You need to see the how powerful the buyer, and all the forces. You need to scan the whole thing using the 5 forces. You can. There are many other tools, but this is the tool that we have done. So you can scan through 5 forces model and have a competitor's strategy using, all the tools, all the models like, BCG and ANSOF, and try to see where we are and where we have to go. So basically, when we talk about ploy, we talk about competition and how to become better at competing. Then the third is the pattern. The third P is that of pattern. Now, pattern generally touches the concept of intended versus emergent. So while plan and ploy are both intended strategic actions. What is intended strategic action?
The intention to do it. Like
we just
planning
discussed this sometime back in our last segment, when we were talking about strategic objectives that we have in consonance with the outcome. So that is intended, that this is the objective and this should be the outcome. It is intended. It is a realized goal, that this is the realized outcome. This is what was planned, objective, and this is the outcome. So plan and ploy is basically to do with intended strategic actions. And pattern is about taking advantage of observed successful behaviors that contribute to strategic success. There lies the pattern. It's about responding, how you respond. See, everybody has a different way of responding to the opportunities and threats. Everybody has a different way of responding. And also in unexpected results which are there. So it's about responding to opportunities and threats and unexpected results in a way that will bring us success. So this is where you are adding or adapting to the strategic objectives or actions, which is due to some unforeseen event, unexpected occurrence. While you are going on your strategy, so intended when will happen? You had already thought about it and it's happening. And when will emergent happen? When something unexpected happens And then you think, okay, no, now we have to go this way, now we have to go that way. So when we talk about pattern, we talk about those unexpected things which might occur, wherein again we are compelled to do a SWOT analysis for ourselves and then try to understand how and where we can generate the value, and then try to establish what is giving us the competitive advantage. So when we check our value chain, when we do our value chain analysis, what are we doing? We are doing, remember value chain, supporting activities, primary activities, you remember that? So again, you do the SWOT analysis because there are some unforeseen things that have happened. So you do your analysis again, and then you try to see that, which function, which activity in my value chain I can perform better and differently and uniquely. So basically, when we are talking about pattern, what are we talking about? We are trying to see the how we can add to our strategic objectives, how we can adapt to our strategic objectives and actions, and due to the unforeseen events, unexpected occurrences, or success, or any kind of opportunity that has organically come into our in front of us, and we need to continue to develop. So we can do the SWOT analysis, and we can also do the value chain analysis to proceed further to attain the competitive advantage. Basically, pattern, when we are talking about analysis of the behavior. It doesn't contradict with plan or ploy. It is just a addition to whatever we have done because of unforeseen circumstances, because of some opportunities that we have spotted that may arise, and we have to respond to them. Is it clear to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. The next is the position. Now, what is position? Position is really a very important part when it comes to strategy. We have been talking about this, I think, from the first lecture, strategic positioning. So how you position yourself in the market, that impacts in a big way your brand. It impacts your pricing. It impacts your relationship with the buyers and the suppliers. And ultimately, it can dictate the chances of your success. So looking at this P, we need to examine our existing and our future positions and determine whether they are correct ones for the company. So what can we use here? What would be the helpful tools here? Positioning, vis-a-vis positioning. You remember the strategy clock? Bowman's strategy clock that we did. It was all with respect our moves, strategic moves with respect to the positioning. Revisit that strategy clock, Bowman's strategy clock that we did. Revisit that, and there you will see that there were several examples of strategic positions, and along with that there were how do we, what move one needs to take with respect to particular strategic position. So there were various strategic positions which were given around the clock, and then there were moves, strategic moves also that were given. So that is one of the helpful tools. And of course, we have our ANSOF metrics also, which assist the companies in thinking about the future. And of course, there are certain marketing tools which go on to decide, but that those tools we have not done. If you have marketing paper, then there are Kotler's pricing strategies and all which we do, but they are not in the purview of our course structure. So basically, when we are talking here, we will only use helpful tools as Bowman's strategy clock and ANSOF metrics are primarily used to get the position, strategic position and the move. So basically, when we talk about strategic position, it is a very core part of our strategic planning, and that every aspect of analysis, whatever analysis that we do, it actually feeds into this particular aspect of strategic positioning. Then the last one is the perspective. The last P is the Mintzberg perspective. Perspective is about the bigger picture of the company. Basically, it incorporates all the stakeholders, your employees, customers, suppliers, competitors, and it is used to establish how a company is perceived. So this brand perception and the overall culture, that feeds into the strategic decisions and helps us to understand if we can effectively execute our chosen objectives. So here, when we are talking about perspective, perspective is formed how? Perspective is formed by the perception, by the image. It is formed by the culture, and that has a huge bearing upon the strategic decisions that are taken. And those strategic decisions, they actually end up influencing our objectives. So it is about understanding the entire profile of the business. It is about being realistic about the type of the organization that we have, and also to ensure that the strategy is in line with the capabilities and is appropriate to the situation. So basically, when we are talking about perspective, it's about the bigger picture, it's about the perception, it's about the culture, it's about the strategic decisions which affect our strategic objectives, and ultimately it has, how our organization looks to the stakeholders. Is it clear to all?
Yes, ma'am.
So these are two things that I had left, and I thought that I will complete so that if there is any question, then there is no doubt. With this, my presentation comes to an end, and our course also comes to an, our syllabus also comes to an end from my side. Any questions, any queries anybody has, please feel free to ask. We have another 5 minutes to go. Anything related to exams, anything related to your preparation, anything, if you need help, then please let me know.
For exams, do you have any notes?
Sorry?
For exam preparation, written on this paper, do you have any notes which can be referred?
I think whatever we have been speaking about, I don't have any particular notes per se, but then we already have some books that we have referred. But if there are any topics that you need, then you can let me. If there are any specific topics that you have, but otherwise I have already given a book which I think must have been shared with you as a soft copy, and that can be referred to.
Which, ma'am, name of the book?
Corporate Strategy, I think it must be given to you in your this thing.
It must be there, yeah. E-copy, PDF.
Yeah. So that book can be referred. Basically, stick to these PPTs, and then in these PPTs, if you need any elaboration, then you can go to our discussions, on the videos. And then also, if you need anything else, then I think that book is sufficient enough. That purple color book which is there, it has everything in it. Nothing that is not there in that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? So it was nice, very nice meeting all of you. Hope to see you all sometime again, somewhere, sometime.
Ma'am, it was nice having you as our business strategy faculty also.
Thank you, Janvi. Thanks a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
It was more of practical knowledge which you shared, really made a difference. So we enjoyed it. It was not monotonous. It was lively, the class, because of all the discussions. It was two-way process rather than one way.
Ma'am, the examples also you used to give, they were quite like enlightening. Yeah, okay, we should know about this also, we should know about that also. We should read more so that we understand what ma'am is exactly saying. So we are trying
We
to keep
realize,
ourselves
yeah.
updated how
Yeah.
you've been
Keep in
teaching
touch.
us.
If there is anything you want to know at any given point of time, please feel free to call. We don't need to involve Ujjwala also in that. So Ujjwala is our coordinator for the syllabus, but not otherwise in life. So you can all please feel free to contact at any given point of time. Keep reading. That really gives a lot of comparative advantage over others and a competitive edge over others. Keep yourself informed. So much is going on, and in your field, life coaching field, there is so much required, and mental wellness, I think, is is the buzzword. So I'm sure all of you will have your own landscape to carve out for yourself in times to come. But please do keep in touch for anything, please feel free to ask. And for exam related, you can talk to Ujjwala and she can get back to you.
Ma'am, we have also chosen CAM, one of the, as our specialization field.
Sorry?
Because we have chosen CAM for we have, yeah.
What's that?
CAM.
Our specialization in
Specialization.
third semester.
Okay.
The key account management.
Uh-huh.
So we are in the next semester also we'll be studying about strategies and things like that.
Yeah.
In the portion, yeah.
There were, I think, earlier there were not many people who have, but I'm happy that you people have opted for key account management.
Yeah.
This time, 6 people are for CAM and 5 people are for L&D.
Learning and development.
Okay, very good. I've yet to see what is there in CAM. So let's see. We'll meet sometime.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am, I want to speak.
All the best.
Ma'am. Hello.
Yes, Ujjwala.
Yeah, ma'am. I want to just express my gratitude towards you. The way you taught the subject and the case studies were really so interesting and so beautiful. Like, I'm in love with the case studies now. I have started reading, and even I've started reading that business articles, which was, in the beginning I had told you that I don't understand how to read it and how to go about it. But then I've started understanding little bit by bit, and it is becoming more interesting to study and to know.
Keep
and
reading.
really understood the subject.
Only key to success. Keep reading. And
Yes,
whatever we are using in our day-to-day lives, just read that also. Even if you read that also, there will be a basic understanding that you will start developing of business environment. Trust me. Colgate use कर रहे हो तो Colgate के बारे में पढ़ो. Bata use पहन रहे हो तो Bata के बारे में पढ़ो. There are news articles for everything and everywhere they are there. And it helps. My journey started like that because I also had a lot of innovations. These economic times and business standard used to overwhelm me when I was doing my graduation. But yes, so that is how I learned, and that is how I tell my students that this is one way that you can do it. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you,
helpful.
ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Ma'am.